Guys, this might sound a bit crazy, but I actually feel a bit sad for the Denver Nuggets. When you look at this Nuggets team, they have so much talent. But what is talent if it's not on the floor? The Denver Nuggets have one of the best players in the game in Nikola Jokic. And to this day, I'll sit here and argue that Nikola Jokic does not get the amount of love that he truly deserves. The Nuggets have had this crazy thing going on, where when Jokic is on the floor, they're one of the best teams in the game of basketball. But when he's off the floor, they're one of the worst. And I think a large part of that is due to how much of this team is simply not healthy. Depth is very important. There's no arguing that. But at the end of the day, sometimes depth can only do so much. If you want to compete on the highest level, not only do you need depth, not only do you need health, but you need guys who can go out and get it every single night. I don't care what anybody says. This season, we were supposed to be witnessing Michael Porter Jr. take another leap. MPJ is special, 6'10", a lights-out shooter, a threat from anywhere on the court. But hey, I guess at the end of the day, unfortunately, injuries were always going to be a concern for him. It sucks how often we see injuries derail very promising careers. Man, don't get me started on what Jamal Murray is supposed to be doing right now. Does anybody else remember what Jamal Murray was doing in the bubble in the NBA playoffs versus Donovan Mitchell? To this day, I still can't believe that the New Orleans Pelicans drafted Buddy Hield over Jamal Murray. I mean, Buddy's cool, don't get me wrong, but have you guys seen Jamal Murray? I think it's safe to say that the Denver Nuggets have their work cut out for them this season. We could sit here and play the injuries and what if game all day, but at the end of the day, the Denver Nuggets have to go out and get it with what they have. While it's been a rough season in Denver, and I say that relatively speaking, everything hasn't been completely terrible. And I say that because, well, they've been able to find guys like Davon Reed. Davon Reed strikes me as a tough player that's not afraid of the moment. While Davon Reed would start on a 10-day contract, he would soon turn that 10-day contract into a two-way contract with the Denver Nuggets. While there were multiple signs pointing to Bol Bol's time in Denver coming to an end, with the emergence of Davon Reed, I figured that end would happen a lot sooner than it initially would. And of course, I was right, even if my logic was off just a bit. When it comes to Bol Bol and the Denver Nuggets, I don't think that there's anybody on this planet that's going to argue that it was not time for a change. Bol Bol has so much talent. If you've been watching him long enough, then you would know what he's truly capable of. But at the same time, if you've been watching him long enough, then you would also know about his downside and his deficiencies. Today, Woj would report that the Detroit Pistons would be finalizing a deal to acquire Denver Nuggets forward Bol Bol for Rodney McGruder and a future second-round pick. Detroit will offer Bol Bol a chance to play a more significant role. Pistons continue to take swings at young developing players in their rebuild. Now, I know over the past couple of years or the past decade, however far back you want to go, the Pistons have gotten a very bad rap when it comes to developing players. I'm not saying that I believe that the Pistons are bad at developing players. I'm saying that this is what I've seen around the internet. I don't think that's a completely fair rap to give this team as of late, because lately, I love what this team has been doing. This team has been taking swings on guys who have not put everything together, and in the process, not only are they creating their own assets, but they're acquiring assets. And I think that's a very beautiful thing if you are a young or rebuilding basketball team. Let's be real, this season, the Pistons aren't going out and winning the NBA championship. This should be a season focused solely on development and culture. When the Pistons signed Jeremy Grant to the contract that they signed Jeremy Grant to, a lot of people questioned that decision by the Detroit Pistons. They questioned Jeremy Grant's decision to go to Detroit. But the fact of the matter is, Jeremy Grant knew that he still could be a better player than he was in Denver, and he knew that as a basketball player, he may not reach his potential in Denver. While Jeremy Grant has been hurt this season for the Detroit Pistons, what he's been able to do in Detroit is nothing short of amazing for Detroit Pistons basketball. While his value truly remains to be seen, it's safe to say that his value has only been going up. Grant went from averaging 12 points a game in Denver all the way to averaging 22.3 points a game in Detroit. Even if Grant isn't in the Pistons' future plans, they now have an asset that has greatly appreciated in value. Maybe that's a bit of a hyperbole, but I definitely do think that Grant is more valuable in Detroit than he was in Denver. While Grant's efficiency has dropped, I really do believe if he was playing alongside other stars and still given a prominent role, his efficiency would go up. I promise you guys I'm going to get back to talking about Bol Bol in just a second. While Grant's missed a ton of time this season, Grant missing this time has let us see exactly how good Hamidou Diallo could be. Diallo has multiple 30-point games this season, and beyond the 30-point games, he's been an absolute pest on the defensive side of the basketball. Yet another example of a player's value potentially going up. Perhaps my favorite example of this in Detroit, or at least one of my favorite examples being as this player now plays for the Houston Rockets, is Christian Wood. When Christian Wood got to Detroit, he was still a bit of a question mark, regardless of what his numbers showed in New Orleans. In New Orleans, Christian Wood would flash in his 8 games, but that was the thing. It was only 8 games. In Detroit, Wood would be given an opportunity to build upon his previous success. Detroit would be able to flip Wood for the number 16 pick in the 2020 NBA draft and Trevor Ariza. In Detroit, I'm definitely excited to see what Bol Bol is going to be able to accomplish. He's going to flash, he's going to stretch the floor, he's going to knock down the deep ball, he's going to have head-scratching blocks and mind-altering dunks. While the highlights that Bol Bol produce are great, I'm going to focus on the little things. While the Pistons are trading for Bol Bol to give him an opportunity, he cannot take this opportunity in Detroit for granted. Because all of a sudden, if things don't work out for Bol Bol in Detroit, then those questions that people are already starting to ask about him become that much more serious. This trade is so great for the Detroit Pistons, simply because it's such a low-risk, high-reward move. Bol Bol is only due $2.2 million this season, and going into this offseason, he's going to be a restricted free agent, which means that if Bol Bol starts balling like we know he can, then the Pistons can literally match any offer for him. Now look, I know there's that whole qualifying offer thing, but to be short, the Detroit Pistons literally hold all of the cards when it comes to the future of Bol Bol. I talked about Christian Wood earlier this video. I actually think that Christian Wood and Bol Bol have a ton of similarities. Just a quick reminder that NBADraft.net compared Bol Bol to a young Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think anybody needs to be reminded exactly how good a young Kristaps Porzingis was for the New York Knicks, but if they do, then just check out the footage on the screen. Detroit has so many young players with upside that honestly, I'm looking forward to watching this team develop. I really do want to see Bol Bol catching some alley-oops from Cade Cunningham. Guys, not only do the Pistons have Cade, Sadiq, Stewart, Killian, I could keep going, but I'm going to cut myself off. Not only do the Pistons have all of these guys, but they're going to be looking at another great pick in this year's NBA draft. Guys, the top of this draft is loaded. Have you seen Banchero? Have you seen Jabari Smith, 6'10", with a KD-like burner? Johnny Smith, Chet, Ivy. There's so much talent at the top of this draft. I really do think that this upcoming year is going to be a good year to have a high pick. Also think that we're starting to see more and more talent come into the league. Maybe I'm tripping though. To take things back to Denver, January 8th, DeMarcus Cousins would sign a 10-day contract with the Denver Nuggets. Of course, DeMarcus would only sign this contract after questionably being waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm not going to sit here and say that DeMarcus was killing in Milwaukee, but I definitely do think that my guy was serviceable at worst. Playing 17 minutes per game, Boogie was shooting 47% from the field, averaging 9 points and grabbing 6 boards. Now, of course, this is apples to oranges, but I also thought Boogie was a solid fill-in for Brook Lopez. Okay, you know what? Let me chill. At the end of the day, there's definitely a reason that I'm not an NBA GM. To quote the Bucks GM, we wouldn't have been able to get through this difficult stretch of the season as successfully as we did without DeMarcus. He was so good for us, and hopefully, we helped him too. We made a strategic decision to have an open roster spot, but there's nothing that would prevent us from partnering with DeMarcus Cousins down the road. While Boogie's time in Milwaukee was somewhat short, I guess at least we got this epic Gideon clip, right?
I love you, Boogie! I love you, Boogie! You want to on the bench, bro?
While Boogie and Jokic don't have identical games, I also think that Boogie is somebody that can at least replicate some of the things that Jokic does well. It's so easy to forget how good Prime Boogie was, man. I am sick of injuries. I'm also sick because at the time that I'm making this video, despite the earlier report that I showed you guys, Boogie is still not on a roster. According to Mike Singer, the Nuggets still have significant interest in signing him to a 10-day deal, but that deal isn't expected to happen today. Speaking of things not happening, according to Woj, Denver's Bol Bol trade with the Detroit Pistons has been voided. The Pistons didn't pass Bol Bol on his physical exam with the team. Dwayne Casey said this about the situation: "I've been around it before it happens. Things happen where information comes up and things can be changed. I really do wonder where the Nuggets go from here. Perhaps they release Bol Bol, or they try to find another trade partner. It's not like they were trading him for very much in the first place. I wonder if there's any chance that they try to work things out." A few days ago, I saw an article that stated that Bol Bol had advocates within the organization. Basically, people were rooting for Bol Bol. Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. I wanted to show you my thoughts on the original trade before we got to the void and all of the new news. Clicking the video on the screen right now is a great way to support my channel. I'm GETLIKECOOP, bringing you guys the scoop. Until our next upload.